Running Sentences presents One Dead Man. Part 3. Wake Up Call. A night's rest should help out Nate and Charles, but the morning comes all too soon, and with it, new problems and issues. This story is written and narrated by Michael Honnery. It is a work of fiction, so any names, characters, businesses, events, and situations within the story are products of the author's imagination. Any resemblance to real people, situations, characters, businesses, events, and/or fictional businesses, characters, events, and so on and so forth is purely coincidental. Copyright 2026, Michael Honnery, all rights reserved. A heavy knock on the bedroom door brought Charles from sleep to awake, in a panicked state. What was all of this noise? Why was it happening? He blearily looked about the hotel room that they'd been gifted, and slowly came to realize what had happened yesterday. With panic now pumping through him, he bolted out of bed and roused Nate to consciousness as the door was busted in. "This is the fire brigade. We have a warning about this hotel room. We're coming in." "For what?" Charles asked groggily. "Sir, there was a report about this room, so we have to check it out." "What's going on?" "We're being raided by the fire department, Nate." "What?" 3 firemen in full fire suits lumbered into the room looking about the space. They were intently looking about for something, but what that was, Charles couldn't say. Then he remembered about the bathroom. "Well, as you gentlemen or ladies can see, there's nothing going on here." "Sir, we will have to decide that. It is our job, after all." "Your little shield says volunteers. That doesn't sound like a job," Nate pointed out, and then he had rolled out of his bed and now stood beside Charles as one of the firemen wandered on by them. The shield emblem on their suit definitely said volunteer. "It's a job to us, sir. Now get out of the way." "We aren't in the way. We're standing next to our beds. You can clearly and easily get around us to see things. Are you really firemen?" Charles yelled in frustration. This fireman who had been speaking to them advanced as menacingly as he could towards them, pulling out an axe that was on his belt. "We will get to decide that. Get out of the way." Both of them decided to jump onto their respective beds as the firemen looked about. One went charging into the bathroom, to which they both shared a look of worry and surprise. "Can you tell us what this is all about?" Charles asked. "No, we cannot." "Why not?" "We don't need to know, and if we don't find anything, then none of this happened." The 2 other firemen came over and held a brief whispered conversation with one another. With this one that had spoken to, Charles shot Nate another worried look, since there was a body in the tub of the bathroom. But the one who'd gone in there hadn't come out screaming or yelling about a body. The talk came to an end between this group of 3, with the one who was speaking to them now turning to them. "Are we on the all clear?" Nate inquired. "All clear. No signs of weirdness or reported health hazards. We'll let you gentlemen get back to bed. But, this sort of thing isn't looked kindly upon." "What isn't?" Charles had to ask before his mind really caught up. 2 gentlemen sharing a room. Under the government's orders, this type of things are not liked," a fireman said. The 2 merely nodded along as the firemen then tromped their way out of the hotel room, closing the slightly, mostly broken door behind them. It did not stay closed. They waited about a minute before they turned to one another. "What the fuck was that?" "No idea, Nate. But we should check things." "Oh, you mean the—" "Yeah, I mean that." "Why won't you let me finish that sentence?" "Because it's weird that the fire department came in here and then left. Someone is obviously keeping track and listening to us." "Right, that's weird, and not all that's going on." "Everything is very weird lately." Charles said. Well, let's just go check the bathroom, please. They may have left us a surprise with how long that fireman was in there. Charles looked at Nate for a second, before realizing that he was talking around the subject now as well. After all, they probably were being listened to, and he'd been stupid enough to suggest all of this in the first place. After you, then? No, we go in at the same time. They marched over to the bathroom, which was still slightly opened, and pushed the door inward. It swung in easily as Nate reached in to turn on the light. Flickering to life, it showed the room much as they'd left it last night, with one exception. The body was missing. We've gone from weird to strange. Very. I think we need to leave and see if there is a way off of this island today. Agreed. Let's run. Not waiting a single moment more, they raced to the broken door, getting it out of their way. Trying to look as inconspicuous as possible, the two had run to the elevators and then sped-walked their way through the hotel lobby and then into town, all the way down to the harbor where a ferry was parked. A long line of people had formed, trying to get on it. But the military or some private contractors had put up a checkpoint that was screening people, even though no one looked to be getting on the boat. Two soldiers approached them and looked them over as they got there. Gentlemen, a soldier greeted them. Hi, is the ferry not working? It works. Only approved people can get aboard. Why are you two on this island? A second soldier questioned. Me and my friend Nate here decided to take a slight day vacation, Charles answered. Did you know? You know those sorts of vacations are frowned upon, the first soldier said, elbowing their companion. No, we were not familiar with that. Nate's objection drew eyebrows from the two soldiers interviewing them. He took in a breath, grimaced, and tried again. What I'm trying to say is we aren't like that. We're friends. We're merely tired from work. The idea of a little hike out on an island came to us, and we went for it. As he said, Charles added, we really need to get back because our workplaces really aren't going to be happy with us missing. Have you been recorded in our records as being here? The second soldier asked. I think so, maybe. How would we know? Have you given your name to any soldiers? The first soldier said. Yes, maybe. I believe so. Charles? We did talk to some soldiers yesterday about the beach, and I think they took our names, yeah. So, yes then. Yes, Nate, Charles added. For the record, then, what are your names again? The second soldier asked. I'm Nate Child. Charles Monty of the Monty family, so you better not keep us here. Why is that, sir? The first soldier asked. The Charles Monty family is an important family that doesn't take kindly to being treated like common stools, Charles said with a nervous look to see if they were buying what he was saying. Well, good for you. That has no effect on us, and we don't care. You aren't on our records, though, so you won't be leaving, the second soldier said, looking over a clipboard they had. There is a chance, though, that we can leave, though, right, soldier? When your time comes, and you've been checked out by all the parties, then there's a chance, yes, the first soldier responded to Nate. What do you two mean, checked out? Just so we're aware, Charles asked, looking confused. You will have a background check and look at your contacts to make sure you aren't against our great, grand government, the first soldier declared. We are not against any government, so you can scratch that off the list and move us right on up it, Nate hurriedly offered. No, you can get out of this line now, the second soldier said. Yes, get out of the way so that those with the rightful path to get off the island can get off. If you fail to comply with our suggestion and orders, you will be taken to a local jail. "They're setting one up in the local gymnasium," the first soldier ordered. Realizing that probably weren't going to get anywhere, they both stepped out of line, though Charles muttered, "It is not much of a suggestion when you're saying it is an order." "Did you say something, mister?" The second soldier, who'd taken a step away, whirled back on him and snapped at Charles. "My apologies. I was just making sure I understood what you wanted of us." "That makes a whole lot of the island who is trying to get out of here. The whole situation is a bloody mess, and now they have an entire aircraft carrier group headed here just to keep an eye on things." Nate and Charles merely nodded okay and continued to back away, both sharing an occasional look with one another that was ripe with fear and worry. After wandering around for a while, they found a local diner that was still running. It was quite crowded in here, since people couldn't get off the island and food was needed by everybody. And it appeared that no one actually had been allowed onto the ferry that they watched from a distance. Despite this, they got a table and were grateful for all the noise and chatter going on around them. They'd just been served their lunch, which seemed like it was skimping on what you could really normally expect from a place like this. Like they were already rationing. "So what do we do next?" "I have another idea, but again, you probably won't like it. You didn't like my last one." "You want us to go find the one who's missing again?" "That's twice, by the way, that it has up and vanished on us." "I'm surprised you're thinking the same way that I am," Charles replied with a raised eyebrow. "No idea why it came to me, but it's the way you think and the first thing that sprang to my mind." "You want to try it then?" "Yes and no, Charles. We explore more of the island to see if we can find a way off. If we run into that thing again, body or alive or whatever it is, which I have an extreme fear that we will, then we will deal with it." Charles nodded along and said, "But how are we going to deal with it?" "I don't know. I was hoping you'd have an idea about it." "No, I ran out of ideas the second we woke up this morning. By the way, what do you think that was all about?" Charles asked as he glanced over the busy diner. It was just going and going, nobody paying attention to them. "The firemen? Probably government agents all dressed up so that they wouldn't freak us out." "Why go through that effort, though?" Charles asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted an answer. Nate sat back on his chair, which then immediately bumped into another person's chair. He hurriedly apologized and moved back closer to the table, though he was already pretty close to it. "I don't know. None of this makes any sense or seems to be worth any of the effort," Nate said, his voice getting angrier with every word. "Which means something bigger is going on." "Exactly. And I don't want to be a part of any of that. Not now, no ever." Once lunch had finished, the two headed out and away from that section of town, out to the beach park section that was filled with trails, woods, cliffs, and beaches to keep one happy with nature. They'd arrived at the entrance to find a few soldiers milling about, though not exactly blocking the way into the area. Charles took the lead with a frown, and one of the soldiers spotted them and stepped in the way right at the trail entrance. "What are you doing here?" this soldier asked. Well, since we cannot leave, we're trying to take in the sights. Is that a problem, soldier?" Charles said. "It is indeed." "What kind of a problem?" "Civilians are not to be wandering about while an investigation across this island is occurring," the soldier announced. "What if we didn't go alone?" Charles offered. "What do you mean?" the soldier asked, taking an awkward step forward to make sure that he really was blocking the way. "You or some other soldier come along with us. I'm sure you're all bored standing around here, and this would get you moving." Nate, having said this, looked quickly to Charles to make sure that's what he meant, and got an affirmative nod from him. "Yes, wouldn't that be a nice thing to do?" Charles added. I cannot leave my station, the soldier replied crisply and standing at attention. The sounds of crunching stones from boots approached as the king woman came upon them. Her uniform was crisper than crisp, with everything exact and to the detail, nothing out of place. Not that either Nate or Charles were aware of what the details might be, or whether it looked proper or not. What's going on here, Corporal Bruce? These men are looking to go into the park, ma'am. I'm following my orders to keep anyone and everyone out of here. Why do you two want to go there? This lady asked. To see the sights, miss, Nate said. And to get away from town? Charles added. You're not up to any funny business, are you? And what are your names for the record? They both shook their heads no, and also gave their names. This lady, who had a sergeant's stripes they were guessing, looked them over and then back to her soldier. We're not trying to cause any problems, just that there is nothing to do in town, and it is overcrowded there, Charles said. Fish Nature is a few steps away. Thought we could try and enjoy that, or while we're stuck here, or something like that, Nate said while making lots of arm gestures towards the beach and trails beyond. Corporal Bruce, you're to escort these men around the park. Enjoy your little reprieve, and if anyone else comes by, you other privates may take up the same offer. Okay? This sergeant said. The rest nodded yes as the lady turned sharply on her heels, about-faced, and marched off back the way she'd come. It was only a few feet away, and there was another gathering of soldiers. These ones looked to be a bit higher rank than the corporal and privates, though. The sun was still pretty high in the sky as the three of them now strolled down a raised walkway that had the beach and ocean on one side, and the other high, sandy dunes made of rock and sand on the other. It was not the typical soft sand that was easy to walk across. Nope, it was filled with rocks, shells, and occasional bursts of sand, here and there. The corporal was in front of them, marching along at a good clip, but kept turning to see that they were following along. It's really nice here, isn't it? Charles said. Yes, it is. What do you think of that, Bruce? The corporal up ahead turned their head to respond to Nate's question. I'm not allowed to respond to questions, comments, or suggestions, sir. Really? That sounded like a response to me. Did you feel the same way, Nate? Yep. The corporal broke his rules and now will be punished. Not that we will ever tell, Nate said. Oh, no need to tell on him. I think he'd do it himself. A straight arrow like him, Charles added, snickering. Shut up, you two. I'm not listening to whatever antics you're up to. It sounds like you're trying to do something, and I won't allow it. They both shared a look of disappointment between one another at that response. Both had silently come up to the idea and communicated through hand gestures to try and trick Bruce into doing something. Whereupon they would run away, or something to that effect. Neither was entirely sure and didn't want to say it out loud, so that the corporal could hear their plans. We would never do something like that. We think you're smart and a great young man, right, Nate? With a great future ahead of you. All we want to know is what's going on around here. You do not get to know that. You do not have the security clearance required for such information, the corporal crisply and clearly said. But we as people deserve to know if something has happened, because there's a lot of strange things going on, and apparently somebody's missing, Charles pointed out. As the corporal came to a stop, a beach ball came from out of nowhere, though likely from somewhere above them and in the sand dunes, and bonked Corporal Bruce right in the head. The corporal then spun about with a finger pointing towards the two of them, accusingly. Which one of you two did that? Nate offered in response. Neither of us. It came from up there. Charles pointed towards a nearby dune, but the corporal did not look that way. Nate did look and caught sight of what looked like a yellow shirt, which froze him up, as it just stayed there, standing, not quite visible, but just etchings of something that looked like it could be there.
Why should I believe either of you? The corporal demanded to know.
Charles, I think I see a yellow shirt up in the dunes. At least I think that's what it is. It's hard to tell with sand all over the place.
Nate whispered to him, though Charles ignored it. You've been throwing looks back at us the entire time, Corporal. I think you would have noticed us blowing up a beach ball, or seen it as picking up one, or you would have seen it along this walkway. Having said this, Charles then turned to look at where he'd been pointed towards by Nate, who was pointing up the dunes. This puke yellow thing, a shirt maybe, was still slightly there, though it looked like it was retreating now. Both looked to one another with worried looks, and then the corporal, who was now surprised by their sudden change in attitude. What is it?
Does your leader have a thing about yellow shirts, Mr. Military Guy?
Charles then added,
Yeah, the group he hangs out with, they all like yellow shirts, right? Yellow, puke, yellow.
The sudden intensity of the questions made Bruce take a few steps back in shock. Oh, what do you mean?
The one guy who's been missing, the one causing all of this nonsense, might be up there.
Nate pointed once again. That's where we're guessing all of this is about, right? Charles added quickly, fearing that this corporal would suspect them of something if they didn't say that part. I don't pay attention to politics. Isn't my business to deal with such things, as my superiors have repeatedly told me. Whatever you're on about, I don't care.
If you could just look, please, you would see,
Nate requested. Why should I?
You want to know what hit you with that ball? Well, it might have been them,
Charles said. There was a moment more where the corporal thought about this and made a bunch of unhappy faces at them. He eventually spun to look towards that direction as he watched a flap of a yellow shirt disappear behind the dune.
That might be the person everyone's looking for, or, the reason the island got locked down,
Nate quickly explained. You should go check it out, Charles said. No, this feels like a setup and a very convenient one at that. Nate and Charles looked at one another. That said the same thought, but figured that Bruce meant them and not the government. It was an idea that wasn't bringing either of them happiness. With brave faces, they tried to make it look like this wasn't the situation, and they'd never think of doing such a thing. Bruce, though, didn't look like the type who would buy ideas based on a person's expression.
Who would set you up, and why would they?
Charles then took a step forward after Nate said this, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. The soldier did have a pistol, though, and while it was still in his holster by his side, Bruce was reaching for it. We have no reason to do any traps or anything like that. All we want to do is see this park, and if we got a guided tour, great. We wanted to get away from life. How would we even know that any of this was going to happen? I don't trust you. We should start marching back right away.
Great, okay, we'll do that. But I will point out, the walkway curves up and towards those dunes, and we passed the halfway mark a while back,
Nate said. What are you saying, Mr. Nate?
That the fastest way back is by going forward, which potentially leads us to that weird person, Corporal, wearing a yellow shirt, maybe, and throwing beach balls at you.
The corporal seemed to consider this for a moment. Fine, I guess. We will go that way. Keep up with me. We're marching double quick to get this over with. Bruce, in a hurried step, began jogging at a good clip down the walkway path that Nate had pointed out was faster to go down. They moved, following the walkway path that arched into the dunes. There were quite a few of them now that they saw them. Up and down the rocky sandy parts went, with what looked like a yellow shirt, but it was hard to tell because of the color not far off. descending another one in front of them. "Over there!" "The path does not go that way. We go back to the start, and that is it. This little expedition is done," Corporal Bruce announced. "The person who's responsible for all of this might be over there." "You don't want to be the one who finds him?" Charles said, confused. "My job is to guard the entranceway to this park, nothing more," the corporal replied. "You're a weird one. Are soldiers supposed to be seeking glory to prove themselves?" Nate said, then added, "Worthy of, being a part of the government?" "I've heard that's what they've always wanted from soldiers, and that's what the advertisements for recruitment and the recruiters told us time and time again when we were in high school," Charles said. "Well, I'm not." "Are you sure?" "Yes, I am, Mr. Nate." The figure wearing a yellow shirt had gone up to the top of the next dune, and then turned towards them. It was weird, and it felt like they couldn't really see this person. The man was only about 60 feet away, but wasn't really in focus. I don't want to say this is weird, but he's right there, and I can't really see him. That's weird, right, Nate? "Yeah, oh yeah, buddy. And our guide here doesn't want to be a hero that saves the government. This place is fucking weird as hell." "You think I don't want to be a hero, to be a great man that everyone loves?" the corporal said, spinning on them. "But you seem not to want that from what you said before," Charles pointed out. His face purple with rage, frustration, and a mix of something else. Bruce then charged off the walkway towards that dune that they'd been sort of seeing this figure from. He was headed right for where that figure had been, and Charles took a step to follow, but Nate grabbed a hold of his arm and whispered to him, "Isn't this a great opportunity to get out of here?" "No, if we show up at the same spot we took off from without our guard, what do you think the military will think, Nate? We did something to him, despite our protests that he ran off on his own. I think the military only listens to other military people, so yeah, let's just go see what the fuck's going on," Charles said with a sigh. Carefully, the two set off, jumping from rocky sandy spot to another, like it would support their weight and not cause an avalanche of rock and sand. Bruce, on the other hand, was charging straight ahead with no care in the world. "Are you up there? Stop at once. Unless you're military, you're not allowed to be here. Sergeant's orders." A few stomped steps over the last dune saw a forest on the other side, and a figure sitting on a boulder-like rock not far away, though reclining against the far side of it. It was probably a better description of what was actually going on. Bruce was halfway down the dune yelling at the man. "Hey, listen to me! You can't be here! You shouldn't be here!" There was no response as all three now closed in to the figure and sat very still. An ugly yellow shirt sitting on them, not well and ill-fittingly. The figure was a fat man, but neither Nate nor Charles were sure if it was the guy everyone was causing so much trouble over, since he was still facing away from them. That, and they never paid much attention to the man in the first place. "Better go yell at him face to face for not listening to your orders, Bruce," Charles said, trying to encourage him. "Yeah, it's worth talking to them to get to know exactly who they are." With a glare at both Charles and Nate, Bruce then marched over to stand in front of this man. "Listen to me, mister. Who are you and what are you doing here, What do you have to say for yourself?" "Is he alive?" "I don't know, from here it kinda looks like a dummy if you ask me, Nate."
"Charles, I didn't ask you, I was asking the corporal."
"Will you answer my questions already, sir?" As the corporal said this, he reached out for the man to grab a hold of his shoulder, but upon touching the figure, it crumbled into pieces of an ill-put-together mannequin. I hate being right.
No you don't, Charles. Also, we saw the figure moving about. That is not this same person.
"This is some sort of madness," Corporal Bruce declared. "We can definitely agree upon that, Bruce. Would you like us to run back to your group and tell them all about this event?" Charles glanced towards Bruce as he asked this, and the corporal seemed to actually be considering it. then shook his head no. You two are what led me here. This is still a setup.
How is this a setup?
I do not know, Nate, but something definitely stinks here. Well, we could have told you that. We've been seeing
a yellow, ugly shirt
all around town, and that made us think that something weird was going on. Charles said, Do people not
wear ugly yellow shirts?
Charles shrugged in response as Nate spoke up.
Not since those types of shirts became the symbol for our dear leader and his party. No one likes to wear yellow anymore because they don't want to be associated with yellow.
That doesn't change anything,
the corporal said in an explosion of frustration. It does for us. If we don't generally tend to see them, then those sorts of things stand out. Right, Nate? Yeah, this person stood out like a sore thumb. It was very much alive.
How was this thing even moving?
The corporal asked.
It was a person that we saw, or some sort of figure set up,
Charles explained, and then carried on.
Maybe it was a person that we saw,
or a robot,
or something. Set all of this up for us to find.
Why would they do that, Charles?
To make us seem like we're going crazy, Nate? How many times have we seen a red shirt lately? A lot, I'd wager. The corporal turned to them with suspicious, narrowed eyes. Wait a minute. What is going on with you two?
We're being chased by ghosts in yellow shirts. Someone super important is apparently dead, and you
two know something,
Corporal Bruce accused.
We really don't know anything, Corporal Bruce. In fact, we suspect that someone wants us to keep finding these
ugly puke yellow
shirts so that they can accuse us of being responsible. Right, Nate?
Charles declared.
I don't even know anymore. This is all very odd, and we aren't leaving here until you give me some answers, Corporal Bruce demanded. Both shook their heads. No, but we're unsure of what to do. End of part 3 of One Dead Man. Thank you for listening.